Chargers. Touchdown, UCLA.
With USC great and NFL stud, Frostee Rucker.
The Trojans back in front.
And LAFB founder Ryan Dyrud on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
All right, Rams fans, always delighted to have on the queen of the Rams beat, Jourdan Rodrigue of The Athletic, to talk with us all about Rams training camp, which wrapped up yesterday as the team travels back to their headquarters. Jourdan, what's up? Thanks for taking the time. How you doing?
I'm good. I definitely am ready to be back home. I love training camp. I think we talked about this before, Ryan. It's just the best feeling in the world. But it is a grind, and it's built and designed that way. So definitely had a great experience down in Irvine. It was awesome to see so many fans there. I saw you there a couple times, and we shouted each other out, and it was really, really fun to actually see everybody engaging with the team. And I love being out in the sun and the heat, and like just writing as many notes as I can, and being so close to all the coaching and all of the just hearing everything that's being said, and it was a really good experience.
Was that like a Hydro Flask fanny pack you were rocking? There was some contraption you're doing that looked like had a tube with water, or maybe it was booze. I don't know.
Yeah, no, the infamous Hydro fanny. Yes, it was.
Okay.
It was like it's like a little Camelback pack, but it's a fanny pack style, and it came in so clutch because things moved so quickly after, in terms of going into the scrum to get Sean McVay and some of the players and everything. And I wouldn't have had time to run back to the media tent. I take notes the whole time, and I try to tweet as many updates as I can and write stuff down and everything. So I don't like holding water, but I'm big on hydration. So people were giving me a lot of crap for it, but I was like, once we went out to Oxnard, I was holding everybody's sunscreen in my Hydro fanny. So I had the last laugh. It was a good time. It was definitely, I'm trying to get a little bit of a sponsorship going, because it definitely like saved my life on many, many occasions out there. That's for sure.
Make that happen. Whoever the brand is out there, come on, get Jourdan Rodrigue some free stuff. I would probably be filling it with beer. Unfortunately, that's how degenerate I am. I would just,
a lot of people suggested that. I was like, maybe one of these days, maybe last day of the year, I'll show up. I'll have a little Hydro fanny flask action going on.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to pass out before 11-on-11 drills even start. So.
Right. I was like, you know what? I might feel like absolute crap if I do that. It's so hot out here. So
yeah, I know. There was a few days we got that nice ocean breeze, but some days it just funnels in there and it just stays hot. But I feel like half the time you're on here, you beat me to my questions, but I'll kind of follow up. You mentioned the fans being there, how awesome it was, and I agree. I mean, it was crazy busy every single day. I'd go on like a Wednesday. I'm like, okay, it'll probably be fairly empty. I'll have good views from where I am in my vantage point, and it was like fighting the crowds every time. So what was it like? I mean, obviously when you were with Carolina, I'm sure you saw fan crowds there, but your first one with the Rams, how did it compare to some past ones? And then just what was on the inside of the fence, what was kind of the momentum or the vibe like from the fans?
Well, I loved it because you can tell the players feed off of it. And like you said, it was packed. And even on, middle of the weekday days, it was really, and I think the Rams really appreciated that. That's one of the main things when I'd be talking to personnel people or front office people, they'd always bring something like that up, because it just was re-energizing and rejuvenating in a way after last year. And so to be able to not just see people enjoying themselves out there, but also the fact that the crowd would swell when something cool happened, or they'd boo the refs when a call was made, or, things like that you just really miss, that the players like genuinely feed off of. And genuinely appreciate and enjoy. And you could just feel that. And the energy transfer back and forth that's one of the reasons why we love the sport. And so I just think that it was a really good feeling to be out there.
Yeah, it's great. And anytime there's a question about LA fanship with football, I mean, go to a 1 hour long practice at Rams.
I know, a walk their jog through day. Like the bleachers were sold out during a jog through. And I was like, well, this is, I kind of had heard it was like, it's taken a while, obviously, to reestablish back in Southern California. And there's obviously so many other things going on here, and traffic and all of that stuff. But at the same time, I mean, this group was determined and they were out in droves and they were energetic and excited. And like, I can't believe how many already had their new gear. Like it was just, I was like, oh my God, it was just really cool. And so it was definitely super, super fun to be in that environment, especially understanding how it's grown exponentially, I think, over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I know those new white jerseys, they were just released. There was a lot of them out there. So
I know. I saw so many of them.
I was like, good for you guys.
Yeah.
And we were talking pre-air about the late start time, how different it is. And it just hit me. Well, maybe it's just to give the fans more time to get there. They're like, oh,
maybe
4 hours. Here you go. So
didn't care about him getting home though.
No. Yeah. Good luck at work tomorrow, but at least we're here today.
Yeah.
So before we get into Centergate and all that craziness that, has gone on, I just am curious your thoughts. Obviously, you do great work there covering the team. So a couple players that you have kind of either stood out that you expected or maybe surprised you. Because I know for me, Justin Hollins was a guy that we didn't talk a ton about through the offseason. I've been big on him since he was with the Broncos, but seeing him with the ones almost all camp was awesome. And obviously, he's on the depth chart as a one right now. But who are some guys that just kind of stood out to you in camp that maybe aren't the Staffers, the Jacksons, the notable guys?
Yeah, and like I'd be remiss without saying like the receivers showed they are exactly who we thought they were. I mean, if people didn't get a chance to go out and catch, no pun intended, catch some of what they were doing, like they looked exactly how you would expect them to look, as did, I think, we sort of expected what this secondary would probably look like, especially conceptually running a lot of the same things that they were last year. Obviously some new faces, but some really bright, young, talented players coming in on that secondary. So the guys who are like behind the guys, right? That's always who I like to look at. And I think that Obo Okoronkwo had just a phenomenal camp. He and Justin Hollins, I think, are going to be a really, really intriguing rush combination because you can hit opposing offensive linemen with a little bit of a power speed or a speed power. And offensive linemen will talk about like, it'll take 10 or 20 plays to get situated against one rusher on one side. Usually it's every down, it's teams who are very fortunate have every down rushers on both sides of the D line. The Rams have one in Leonard Floyd, who showed up and looks every bit of the part and all of that. But on the other side, they do not have an every down rusher. So they're basically, and I kind of wrote it in my article, is like, it's almost like when the Power Rangers assemble into this giant robot, like they're pulling traits from Obo that they like, from Justin that they like, and designing a rush package and a pass rush plan that utilizes those guys in a rotation. And it's not just because they don't have a 3-down rusher on that side. It certainly is a big part of it, but it's also because you're looking probably at a continued management situation with Terrell Lewis and his knee. He's a super talented player, but you are going to have to manage. If you keep him, you're going to have to manage that injury, and it just lingers in it and it reoccurs. And this is, of course, as we know, why he fell in the draft and everything. But he can be really productive on 15 to 20 snaps a game. What are you going to do with the rest of the time? Well, it actually kind of maybe works out to your favor because now you have offensive linemen who cannot get comfortable against anybody because you're rotating these guys in. So it's all about when Justin Hollins and and Obo can get used to being out of rhythm and producing out of rhythm as pass rushers in a rotation. And at the same time, that helps sort of maximize, I think, or helps to at least try to maximize Terrell Lewis's availability. And then on the other side of the ball, really liked what I saw from Tristan Jackson. He was thrown into a really tough situation in terms of, hey, you show up the first day of actual field work and the receiver who was supposed to be taking a certain amount of reps, is quarantining for 10 days because he has a COVID-19, goes on COVID-19 reserve. And so taking all of those reps. And then you also know that Deshaun Jackson's taking vet days here and there because they are also continuing to manage him to make sure he stays healthy. So Tristan Jackson's not only taking all of Tutu Atwell's reps to open camp, but then once Tutu comes back, is also managing Deshaun Jackson's reps when Deshaun is taking a vet day. And you could just feel the energy from him seizing those opportunities and not willing to cede any inch of the opportunity that he'd been given. and he really, really impressed me. Jacob Harris, who I'm really high on. And by the way, I get this question like all the time, and I know you know what I'm going to say, Ryan, right this second.
Yep.
Just because I'm high on Jacob Harris, it doesn't mean that it's at Bryson Hopkins' detriment. Bryson Hopkins showed up to camp this year and is built completely differently than he was last year. And to me, that shows that they have realigned his role. Again, no pun intended, because he seems like he'll be playing in line a little bit more and certainly will be that big-bodied heavy hitter on special teams that they need, especially if a guy like Jacob Harris and Tyler Higbee are going to be working more into the passing game because Matthew Stafford loves to throw to tight ends. So it's not at anybody's detriment. But Jacob Harris, once he fully kind of recovered from that core procedure that I reported the first week of camp that he had, he looked incredible. I mean, he's fitting in well. A couple of those red zone, just leaping acrobatic catches, pulling him in, just moves at a different speed than you would expect for someone of his size. And I really liked what and Darrell Henderson, I think, is an awesome player, but I was watching also guys behind him, and I really liked what Xavier Jones and Jake Funk were able to do. I think Xavier Jones, I've been trying to, make sure people are aware of him since last year, because he's a hard runner. He's a great runner. He's elusive. He's explosive. He can work in the passing game. But I think you also don't necessarily expect your rookie 7th round draft pick to show up the way that he did in terms of Jake Funk. And I think he might surprise some people this year in terms of what he's able to do.
Yeah. No, yeah. So much good stuff all there. A lot of good stuff, the points you made. I'll just quickly touch on each. So going back to the pass rushers, I've said many times, and so it's really refreshing to hear you say it, that not having a 3-down specialist on the other side is not necessarily a bad thing. I think a rotation is good. And like you said, managing those minutes for Terrell Lewis. We saw Obo last year have high production. A lot of people are like, oh, we'll just give him more reps because of that production. But maybe that's what they want from him, is just those high variable situations they can put him in and see him go to work, instead of being like, okay, you're on all 3 downs. And then Justin Hollins, obviously, who fits Raheem Morris's build to a T, exactly what he looks for. So it just makes sense that he's getting more reps out there. So I think that volume of having all 3 guys, not letting a tackle get comfortable, like you said, is refreshing. It's kind of in the same mindset of what McVay wants to do, just different terminologies versus what other coaches do in the NFL. So I think they're going to be good there, and it'll be fun to see how they do. Do you think, you don't have to do any reporting on this, but do you think we'll see any of those 3 in preseason?
You might see a little of Obo just because he did miss some of that time last year, but I would be more surprised to see either of those guys get like a high volume of reps, just because they are going to count on them. And Obo did have sort of the history with the injuries as well. You certainly will not see Terrell Lewis. I would be really surprised if you saw him just because they're continuing to manage the knee. So it's an opportunity for, some of these younger guys. Chris Garrett looks the part. I mean, I think he just needs to practice against pros a little bit. But he absolutely looks the total part of a professional pass rusher. Like, he looks like he does it for a living, which he now does. So he just needs to practice against it. Works out. Yeah. So he just needs to practice against pros a little bit more. And then Justin Lawler seems like he'll be the guy who will back up Leonard Floyd on the other side. Really sort of started to show that as camp progressed. So I think you'll see a lot of those guys. And then, it's going to be interesting. There's young guys who are interior defensive linemen who they are built the way that the Rams like to develop their guys who, if they were in a 4-man front, you might call them a 3 technique. You don't really call them that in this front that they run, but they can align in a variety of ways. Ernest Brown was working some with the outside linebackers and some with the interior defensive linemen. So I think you'll see a lot of him in the preseason as well. In terms of the other guys, like, you're going to see a lot of Tristan Jackson. I would guarantee it. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams kept 7 receivers to include him on the roster. And they've done crazier things, as I'm sure we'll get to in a minute, but, and I think you're going to see a lot of young guys. Bronte Harris really came along as the latter days of camp picked up and the pads came on and things got more physical. Troy Warner, really, I kept hearing coaches praise him when he would do certain things, move in the right places. Ernest Jones had a great camp. You'll see him a lot in the preseason. I think you'll see probably Traven Howard a lot in the preseason too, just to get his feet back under him and in a live situation. And guys like Kareem Orr, it's, I think you'll see heavy Jake Funk, heavy Xavier Jones. You're not going to see any Darrell Henderson, that's for sure.
Nope.
But yeah, I think you'll see all those guys I mentioned, plus a few more to keep an eye on. I think you'll see a lot of those guys as they open this week against the other Los Angeles Chargers. That's going to be a fun one.
Oh, can't wait. We'll be there. So can't wait. Good job with all those names too. Cause I get, when I'm writing, it's fine. When I'm talking, the fact that they drafted a Bobby Brown, an Ernest Jones, and
two Ernests,
two
Browns. Yeah.
Ernest Brown, Bobby Brown, and Ernest Jones.
Yeah.
So yeah, see, I already messed it up. So I know who they are, but when I'm saying, I'm like, okay, which one I'm talking about? So good job. That's all I'm going to say. Good job to you. Ernest Jones yesterday, by the way, he had a pick at the goal line, didn't he?
Yeah, he was on a short field. They were playing like goal line red zone, doing some situational stuff, and he ran it all the way back. Yeah. He's gotten his hands on the ball several times, whether it was against the first team offense, because they repped ones versus twos and twos versus ones through most of the periods of camp. Not only is that a sort of mental stress kind of thing for both sides, but it also helps keep people safe, reduces the risk of injury, because ones versus ones, you tend to go at a higher pace. Mm-hmm. You tend to be more physical, more competitive. So I think it's a really interesting tactic and a smart thing that they do. So also, like, that's kind of what I saw. I kept trying to, I know I probably sound like a broken record. I kept trying to put it in my stories and on Twitter, just repeat, like ones versus twos versus ones, because sometimes people would be like, Ernest Jones picked off Matthew Stafford, first team linebacker confirmed, because obviously Matthew Stafford is a starting quarterback, but it really was not. That's not the case. It's just that he was performing really, and it's still good news because he was performing really well against the first team defense or first team offense. It's just that he wasn't playing on the first team defense, but still, I mean, I think I'm an optimist, so I think that's still a really a net positive, honestly, all around.
Yeah, no, I am too. So absolutely. Yeah. That's a good way to put it too, that it's for like injury concerns and stuff like that. So I haven't heard that before. When I played ball, that was some stuff our coaches would say too, when we would do stuff like that. So it's also to get some of those young guys high competition against, the starters, get them out there and see how they do in those high pressure situations. So two big topics we'll talk about, Jourdan, before we get you out of here. I talked about it on my last show a little bit, just because it happened on whatever day, all these days blend together, but the joint practice with Cowboys and Rams, you were there in Oxnard. So just touch briefly on it. I know, no Dak because he's been injured, but just how did the defense look? How did the offense look? What was the vibe like in Oxnard? What was the turnout? A lot of Cowboys fans here in SoCal, regardless of how great the Rams and Chargers are doing here. There's always going to be a lot of Cowboys fans because there was no teams here for 20 plus years. But what was the practice like up there in Oxnard?
Yeah, it was good. And I saw a lot of Rams fans there, actually. One of the security guards was like, wow, I heard him talking to his buddy, and he was like, wow, there's a lot more Rams fans here, even though this is Cowboys camp and they have a fan fest and all of that. So that was cool to see. Didn't see, I think all of the fans started bonding together collectively because two fans walked in and one was wearing an Eagles jersey and the other was wearing a 49ers jersey. But yeah, so it was funny because the fan base is kind of bonded collectively over seeing those two walk in. And it was a good day. It was hot. It was really hot. I think the Rams, they come in and, you're expecting it to be a grind. It's a padded practice, obviously, against an opponent. Pretty competitive, couple skirmishes, as I know everybody saw and dissected, kind of hilariously. Yeah. And everyone, I'm sure, has their opinions about everything that happened. But, the fact that Sean McVay wasn't concerned about it kind of tells me everything I need to know about what the situation was. And then, the Rams were like adamantly not going to show anything on a live broadcasted practice. They were like, their offense was on the far field, first of all, away from most of what the broadcast cameras were showing. And they were running a lot of scripted stuff. And then on the other side, the Rams were adamantly not going to show what they're going to do with their defense, which is run it very similarly to how they did last year. But the funny part, the way you could tell that they were not going to budge was they stuck Jalen Ramsey into the nickel and they did not move him. And Mike McCarthy threw CeeDee Lamb on the outside, Michael Gallup on the outside. And, in my head, I'm thinking, like, is he trying to get Jalen to move to the outside to see if they're going to rotate him like they did last year?
Mm-hmm.
And the Rams were not biting on it. And David Long drew the short straw on that in that regard, because I don't think in a normal game he will be asked to rep after rep after rep, like 30 times against, two of the more talented receivers, CeeDee especially, one of the more talented receivers in the league. And so, but then, he got a couple back. He had a long day. He got a couple back near the end. A couple of the guys that I mentioned before, Kareem Moore especially, had a good day on the second team. Linebackers look great. All three of the starting linebackers, or the guys who will rotate in the starting rotation in terms of Kenny Young, Micah Kiser, and Troy Reeder. They all got into the backfield on some really physical plays. Kenny Young is especially having a phenomenal camp, and I think he's going to take a lead role here moving into the season, because I doubt he'll play much in the preseason. And so they looked really, really good, really physical along the line of scrimmage on the defensive side. And then obviously, as we know, that was really the first day that Brian Allen moved to center, pretty much full time, and now is sort of trending toward holding that down, for the start of the season.
Well, that will lead into our final topics. We can't have you on and not talk about it. Centergate, it went on all off season. It's been Corbett. Minicamp, OTAs, all
like I've seen like almost every, in the spring we get 2 practices, 1 practice a week, but I know they weren't repping. They were repping Austin Corbett the entire time. The entire time. And
McVay even said that the entire time. Like, he wasn't shy about it. He was the guy. All of a sudden it happens at the joint practice. And then since then, and you reported on Monday and Tuesday that Brian Allen was a heavy dosage. So 2 questions to get you out of here on. One, is that more of, and I have my opinion, but I want to obviously hear from you, but is that more of a Corbett struggling at center, or more of a Bobby Evans struggling at guard, and they feel more comfortable with Corbett at center, the lesser of two evils, blah, 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 something like that? And 2, to make fans feel a little better, how has Brian Allen overall, in your eyes, looked at center when he has been with the twos or playing with Walford, or then the last 2.5 days at center?
Yeah, and the pads went on, and in some cases you see small changes, but nothing usually this drastic. This was a drastic change, and a lot of it, and I can actually answer both of those questions at once, because this was a lot of things at one time, and that I am certain of. Not only was it that Austin Corbett, they determined, is the best right guard on the team, which I think some people maybe could have said before that, right? Yeah. Like, not trying to sound like a jerk, but I think, yes, he is the best right guard on the team. It's not a detriment to Bobby Evans, who I think is a talented player. But you also, again, you predicated most of your decision-making along the offensive line in free agency and in the draft on the fact that you were moving Austin Corbett to center, right? And then thus putting Bobby Evans in at right guard, but you also were doing so not having seen those two play the position in pads, nor seeing Brian Allen play the position in pads. So pads go on leading up to the Cowboys scrimmage. They finally got a chance to see really what people look like in that scrimmage, so you have a 2 days in pads where you can kind of get a feel for it. Then you have the scrimmage, which is also in pads against a live opponent. And so you're really starting to see, how things are shaking out and who's performing where and what guys look like physically for real. Right. And so I think it's a lot of things at once. I think it was Brian Allen is playing well at center and he looks stronger. To me, I was not present for the 2019 season. I know there are so there were some issues there, but he looks strong to me. He looks like he's ready and willing to just get down in the dirt against whoever his guy is. And he has attacked this sort of position battle that was not a position battle for a long time. He treated it that way, and he attacked it with such tenacity that I think it really impressed Sean McVay specifically. Yeah. And so that is a truth at one time, as well as it is less of a risk to play in their minds. To me, it is less of a risk to play Brian Allen, who you drafted to ultimately take over at center one day, less of a risk to play him there than it is to not play Austin Corbett at guard.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I think you just you find that Austin Corbett's your best right guard. Brian Allen is among then who is left. Brian Allen is, of course, your best option at center.
Mhm.
And at this point, you know, they're going to be in pads 2 more days this week, and then they're going to be in and out of pads at certain times through the next couple of weeks. And that's how much time you have. So whether or not it works, I think you're looking at Brian Allen as your starting center to open the season. Of course, I'm not going to have any definites at this point because that worked out well the first time.
Yeah.
So not going to have any
All of
definites.
us. Yeah.
Yeah. And like whether it's official or unofficial or whatever, this is the way that it's trending. So I think you're looking at that to open the season. I'd be surprised at this point if it didn't continue to trend this way.
Yeah. I'm curious what we'll see in preseason because obviously McVay does not play starters, but with this now all of a sudden being this 180 reversal, I'm curious. I don't think we will, but I wonder if we'll see Allen out there getting any snaps at center. And you know, we had Whitworth on a few months ago, and he said he'd play center if he needed to. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I'm rooting for Allen. You know,
he could do anything. Andrew Whitworth could like build a rocket in his garage if he really wanted to.
Easily. So, but you know, you want your best 5 guys out there, and if they feel right now those are their best 5 in whatever position they line up, we'll see how it works out. But we will obviously keep our eyes on that, and you will because you are the best at doing that. You've been all about the offensive line, so we appreciate that. This is another conversation for another day, but I'm so curious those conversations behind closed doors with Aaron Cromer, and if any of this is why he's no longer with the Rams, but that's another conversation. So, Jourdan, you're the best. I know it's busy, so thank you for taking the time, jumping on with us for a few talking about your thoughts with camp. We'll have you on again throughout the rest of the preseason and into the season, and hopefully grab a beer with you soon. We still got to get you some Brewery X. We got to get that out to you.
I know. I've loved all the recommendations. I know you sent me a ton of recommendations as well, and I'm eager to try all of those out. But thank you so much for having me. Thanks for everything you do, especially for Los Angeles football. Really excited to get going here. It's starting to feel a little more real than it was 3 weeks ago. So pretty excited. And thanks again for having me. And thanks to everyone who reads and subscribes and follows along.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, finally we're here. But yeah, check out Jourdan on Twitter and obviously at The Athletic for all the best Rams coverage that you can get from her. So thanks, Jourdan. Appreciate you. Have a good day. We'll talk soon. Okay.